Welcome to the seventh and last video of Building Bridges, where we cover Chapter 7 titled Go is in the Gospel. In Chapter 7, I share a story about my friend Chris. Chris and I met because of our mutual desire to end the atrocity of human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery. There are more slaves in the world today, with an estimated 27 million trapped in bondage to human trafficking. And not only that, only 1 to 2% of them will be rescued unless you and I do something. Chris and I have decided we want to do something about it. And Chris leads her team into strip clubs in the Washington, D.C. metro area with the heart and hope to build bridges to hearts for God's glory. They go into darkness to shine light because women that are exotic dancers are at an increased risk or are being trafficked. And I'm so proud of Chris and her team. They've had some very discouraging times, and they've had some great times of triumph. And I'm so proud of Chris and her team because they know God called them to go there, to the strip clubs, to minister to the girls that are dancing. Not only that, they've built some incredible bridges to the manager of strip clubs, to bouncers, even to some customers in the strip club. And so I want to encourage you today that you and my purpose is to build bridges to live out Go is in the Gospel in our everyday life. There are tons of opportunities that God has intentionally placed in our life to build bridges. But there's some points in our life when we see that God has sent us somewhere we would not go in our normal everyday life, like Chris goes into a strip club. And I remember a time in my life where God asked me to go somewhere I would not go in my normal everyday life, with the heart and hope, like Chris, to build bridges, to hopefully build a relationship, build bridges, mend some hurt hearts, and shine God's love. It was in that point when I was preparing to go on the trip where God had me sift through a lot of these questions that you'll find in Chapter 7. One of those questions is this: how far would I go to reach someone for Christ? And when I think about that question, and one of the things we need to do is remove the ego. Ego, E-G-O, is when we ease God out. When I was preparing to go on this trip, I was scared because I was afraid people would judge me. I was afraid Christians would judge me. I don't have to worry about what Christians think of me. I have to worry about what Jesus thinks of me. And wherever he sends you to go in your daily life, or not in your daily life, and he's sending you somewhere differently, don't worry about what other people think. Worry about what God thinks. And it says here in 1 Samuel 16:7 that man looks at outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And if it's the heart that's what's important to God, that's what's important to me then. And I don't have to worry about anything else. Point number 1 is Go is in the Gospel. Point 2 is to shoot for the heart. The heart is the life source. And don't look at outward appearances or weird behavior that's different than yours, or really what appears to be perfect behavior, because we don't have to look at outward appearance. That doesn't tell us everything. It's the heart that's important. So point 1 is Go is in the Gospel. Point 2 is shoot for the heart. Point 3 is don't let your ego get in the way. A lot of us have heard the statement, build a bridge and get over it. And today I want to encourage your heart to build a bridge and get to it. We're supposed to be ambassadors of God, and if we sit back and just say, well, I know Jesus, that's good enough, it's not good enough because we're not living out the Great Commission, which is to go. Go and show up for your everyday life, because God's intentionally placed bridges for you to build because he finds you important to his purposes. And then God will also reveal there's places he wants you to go. Maybe it's the crevices of darkness. Maybe it's into a third world country. Maybe it's into a place in your community that you don't normally go to that he wants you to go into and start building relationships, because those people have been marginalized and need to know, just like that woman did in chapter 1, that God is alive and he loves them. And they'll only know if we wake up and go live out our purpose. So as we close this video today, I want to encourage you to not just build a bridge and get over it, to build a bridge and get to it. That heart on the other side that desperately needs to know that God is alive and loves them, and they'll know is if we tell them and show them. So as we close this video series out today, I want to ask you this question. Where is God sending you to build bridges? Where is your go in the gospel? And there's really two parts of that question. Where in your daily life? And then is there a place outside of your normal daily life? Maybe it's a strip club like Chris, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's he's calling you to this coffee house that you normally wouldn't go to, or maybe it's to this community center that you normally wouldn't go to, or I don't know. Where is God sending you to go build bridges for His glory? And as we close today, I want to thank you for being part of this video series. Thank you for reading my book. I pray it's encouraged your heart, that you've seen that you were made on purpose for a purpose, and that you go out and confidently go out and build bridges. You're not going to do it perfectly. You've seen beautiful examples from me of how it's been. I have not done it perfectly. And I want to encourage you to use your life, your scars, your successes, your struggles, your stories to build bridges. You see, all throughout my book, I intentionally place stories because that's the vehicle God used, Jesus used while He was on the earth. He used stories to connect with people. Do you know stories make people nod their heads and say, me too? When I share about being a glutton and I struggle with the food, like compulsive eating, people nod their heads and say, me too, Steph. And when I share where I've been an idiot, people say, me too. And some places where I've had some strides, people say, me too. And I want to encourage you to use your life story as one of the most powerful vehicles to build a bridge to connect to people's hearts. You know, that very same story I shared in chapter 1, when I was writing Building Bridges, my friend who's so beautiful and so intelligent and so lovely, she identifies as an atheist, and she wanted to be on my Building Bridges book club team. This was a team that was intentionally put together to pre-read Building Bridges so they could give me input so I could shape and make a better message for you. You know, my friend does not identify as a Christian. She identifies as an atheist. But this is what she told me when she read chapter 1's story about me going into the bookstore. She doesn't subscribe to Christianity, but she believed that that story happened. And that's where I really want to encourage you. Use your stories. People are watching your life. They're looking to see if your actions, if they run parallel to the words you speak. And if you really do love Jesus, you won't stay where you are. You'll go wherever God tells you to go in your everyday life and other places to go shine the hope of Christ into a world that desperately needs to know that God is alive and that He loves them. Thank you so much for being part of this Building Bridges, and I pray you live a life that continues to build bridges for God's glory.